started.
If I can help in any way or provide any value to your community or insights, then that's my day done.
Amazing. I think you can. And so we brought Mark on today, Mark LERUSTE, to to inspire us, and probably me too, definitely me, to talk to us more about that. So Mark, what I know about you so far is you set up the Unconventionalists, you run live events, and you are a TEDx speaker to inspire others in your TEDx talk, The Power of Purpose. I'm pretty sure I must have watched that when I was figuring out my purpose over the last year or so. It really rings a bell. So tell me more about what's going on with you. You also have a podcast.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me, and welcome everyone. If anyone's watching this, maybe my mum. I'm lucky, but yeah, no, it's been a fun ride actually. It's been a fun ride since I started the Unconventionalists. Officially, it'll be 3 years ago. 3 years ago. Wow, that's crazy. So I've got a podcast, a weekly podcast called The Unconventionalists, where I sit down and have candid conversations with a wide array of entrepreneurs, authors, athletes, politicians, and talk about the successes and failures and what they've learned from both. It's been really cool, actually. Really grateful. I became a dad last year, so that's like a big change in my life. That's been really cool. I have a daughter. That sounds weird. I am the father of a daughter. And one of my kind of missions is to eradicate career misery in the workplace by developing the future generation of purpose-driven leaders. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do. You've got to have that belief that it's possible, and that there's a different way of being within organizations and interacting with one another and leading, and it's been fun. Some challenging times, some good times. 2019, last year was the 2010s. Can you believe that? I don't know. I just find that crazy.
I know, it's crazy.
Here we go, 2020s.
Great. And what out of all these things, my first thought is you're about purpose, and you've chosen all these specific things to inspire people for their purpose. And what led you to deciding this was the right way for me? For example, giving talks, that was the right route, and running the podcast. What told you that was the best?
Yeah, I think there's like a romantic way of kind of saying, oh yeah, it makes perfect sense, and I was clear and I knew exactly. And I think if you actually look back on most people's stories, and mine, definitely, it's just a series of events that kind of led to where I am today. And I could have never imagined that I'd be here today if you'd asked me like 5 years ago. But I guess the really short version of kind of my story is, I went through the typical journey of being told that, if you go to a good university, good grades, go to a good university, graduate, get a good job, work hard for like 30 years, and then, maybe get a golden watch and retire and start enjoying life, maybe, if you can still move. And I think I'm part of the generation of people kind of asking themselves bigger questions. Why am I doing this, and why does this matter? And I had stereotypical of our generation, I guess. I had a quarter life crisis. Who am I? What do I want to do? All that stuff, and I didn't know it back then. I didn't know words like values or vision or purpose, anything like that. I just knew that what I was doing wasn't feeling right, and so quit the job. Went on this kind of really down, dark journey of trying to figure out what the hell I was about, feeling a bit depressed, feeling lost, didn't understand why. And I came across a coach, basically. One of my mum's friends who knew me when I was a kid was visiting from America. And my mum made, a joke of saying, oh, Roya, fix Mark, he's depressed, and Roya's going to fix you. She's some coach or something. And we kind of both laughed. And she took me on as a coach, as a client, which honestly was, game changing. I mean, it sounds very cliche and you hear this a lot, but it really was. It was given that opportunity and given a space where I could actually speak and open up about whatever was going on for me, whatever I was dreaming about, whatever I'd, stopped kind of reflecting on. in a non-judgmental, non-directional way. And so having that opportunity made me realize that, wow, actually people will flourish when given an opportunity to just simply be witnessed and seen. And it sounds super wanky and it sounds super kind of hippie, but I was working in corporates, right? And so I was working in companies, and this was so not a thing. So when I realized that, and I was living in France at the time, because I came back from my world travels, and it's super cynical in France, right? Anything a bit like New Age or this stuff. And so I thought, well, yeah, I want to become a coach, definitely. You know, that's something I want to do at some point. And I also realized that what I was doing, the work I was doing back then, wasn't what I wanted to do. And so I did something which now doesn't sound pioneering or very cool, but back then no one was doing it. This is 2011. I did a video CV. So if people want to look at it, type my name, Mark LeRuste video CV, you'll find it. And I did it back then, and everybody laughed at me. Everybody said it was a stupid idea, except for two of my friends, Mickey Mayu and Dennis Duvauchel, who believed in it, the project. One of them helped me with the website. The other one helped me with the video. And it went viral. You know, it kind of, people were tweeting Oprah. It was really funny. And so next thing you know, I sent a tweet to the founder of the Member Foundation, Adam Garoni, who was the CEO. He's no longer the CEO now. He was the co-founder and CEO. And long story short, I got a meeting in London with another co-founder. It was crazy. It was like short-term notice. Got on a Eurostar pretending like I had to take a day off at work. And they gave me the job on the spot. And so to basically launch the foundation across some European countries and grow it, which was amazing and crazy. And it was everything that I kind of aspired it to be. It was a really meaningful and purposeful mission, you know, to change the face of men's health, to raise awareness and funds for prostate cancer, testicular cancer, mental health, and physical inactivity in a really cool environment with some really smart and passionate people. And it was mad. And so I quit the job, went over to the UK. I did that for 4 years while training as a coach, did that, wrote a book, ran retreats, did the cliche thing of what all coaches do. And I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed growing my kind of coaching business, you know, helping people, you know, build their coaching businesses, and also helping people find meaningful work. But there was a little something missing, I guess. And so within the 4 years of growing the foundation and raising 2.8 million euros, getting 110,000 people to sign up and all that stuff, I decided to quit. You know, I knew that if I stayed within November, I could have had a meaningful and amazing job for a long time. But there was something inside of me that was calling me, which was to start something, to do something. And so the Unconventionalists actually started as a podcast, as a complete passion project on the side. It was 2015. 2015. Well, that's nuts. 4 years. Yeah, 2015. I just wanted to record conversations with people who inspired me, to really hear about the ups and downs and everything they learned from that. And so, yeah, 112 episodes in, I think we're now. Since then, yeah, invited to give a TEDx talk to share about what I learned about purpose. And I think what happened about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, I started getting invited by companies, because I wrote a book 4 years ago, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago, about, you know, how to find more meaningful work and all this kind of stuff. And companies started to bring me in to talk about how to find meaning and purpose at work, amongst other things. And so I thought it was weird. I thought it was really strange. Like, they'd get this bearded guy coming in who wrote a book about how to quit your job and find meaningful work. And I thought it was awkward. But actually what happened is that I realized that companies are made of people. And where there are people, there is suffering. And where there's suffering, there's hope. And so I knew that I needed to kind of direct my attention, instead of trying to fix everyone that was dropping out of the corporate system, the businesses and charities, and all equally have people in, I guess, you know, kind of suffering. I needed to get into companies and fix them from the inside. And fix is a bit of a big word, but basically help them from the inside. And so it felt like really scary, like a bit of a David and Goliath moment, where I was up against these huge companies and old ways of thinking. And I started developing my program to basically develop the next generation of purpose-driven leaders, with the strong belief that our mission at the Unconventionalists is to eradicate career misery in the workplace by helping leaders and organizations clarify their purpose to better and lead their people. Because when people are on purpose and get to express that on a daily basis, they'll give everything they have. And that can only work with a few kind of foundations that need to be in place in every organization, including things like purpose, mission, vision, leadership, culture, behaviors and rituals and that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's exciting. I get to work with some really, really cool companies, you know, shout out to Method and eCover, Intuit, State Street, like some really cool companies who are trying to bring a change, actually. Like I call it the new wave of leadership, when you look especially at millennials. I focus a lot on new generations. So millennial, Gen Z are starting, they're still quite young though, but in the workplace, but millennials and getting to try and understand how can we unleash the full potential of employees by putting purpose first. So yeah, that's kind of how I ended up there in a nutshell. I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah, it's a kind of mix of, usually the way it works is people bring me in to give a talk. Then when they find out about what we do, they're like, oh my God, that's really cool. Can you come and work with us? And then we work with them regularly, like on a 12-month basis, where we run some workshops and have some ongoing coaching. Because one of the things we believe in is that actually, if you want to unleash the potential of your people, you need to scale personal coaching across the organization and have everyone access it, not just top tier leaders and C-suites, and make that accessible to all.
And what's incredible about your story is what I'm noticing, but correct me if I'm wrong, is that there was the trigger, which was the coaching, the one-to-one coaching, and then there was the passion project. So you had this freedom to create and very low pressure, if any. And I'm sure you know more about this than I do, but what I'm finding interesting here is I'm wondering if your delicate position in what you do, your job, and why it may be challenging, is because you're trying to relieve that pressure and help people create in their workplace where there is evidently pressure to make money, to achieve, to maybe compete amongst others. I'm not sure, different cultures, different companies. But I'm wondering, is that the delicate balance where, because you reached your purpose through this really free sense of no pressure and freedom?
Yeah, so I think I understand your question, and let me reflect it back to you. So what I think you're asking me is the challenge between what you discovered when you found coaching and that you're now trying to change organizations by implementing that? Is that what the question is, around what the challenge is between the two?
Yes, like coaching people whilst they're in a full-time job.
Yeah, great. Okay, cool. Yeah, perfect. So yeah, it's a really good point. So basically the big challenge I have, and some leaders, big shout out to all the leaders who work with me, who bring me in. Some, forward-thinking leaders get this. Pioneering organizations get this. It's basically, it's how do you adopt a long-term focused mindset as opposed to being obsessed by the short-term bottom line. What I mean by that is, if you go by old school metric systems, you basically have to quantify and evaluate your business decisions, and how does it make business sense? How can you put a mathematical equation to the impact of what you're doing, whether that's employee engagement, what have you. But I think it's Einstein that had this great quote that said, not all things that matter can be measured, and not all things that can be measured matter. And I think I have to go into companies and go, look, here's the deal. We have a purpose crisis in the workplace. That's just a fact. 71% of millennials feel disengaged from the work that they do. A third find that their work isn't meaningful, and half said they want to quit their jobs by 2020 and change. So there's this kind of like real problem that companies are finding, and they're throwing all these perks at their people. So whether that's a ping pong table, bean bags, yoga class, all that kind of stuff that you hear, the cliche. Often when I speak to people, organizations and leaders, they say, we do all these things and they're still not happy. They're still not happy and they're still not content. And I think it's great to have an environment where you have these things, but here's the challenge that I find that's quite interesting. You can go into a company and they'll have bean bags and nap pods, and you ask them, like, how many people actually use these? And often when I speak to people, they're like, well, actually not that much. Why? Because they feel like if they're being caught napping, then what will people think about them? So you've got a cultural intrinsic issue which is not being addressed. So you're throwing stuff at it, but you're not actually fixing what's happening. The other thing is, yeah, it's great to have perks. Honestly, it's great. I mean, I'm not going to complain if I worked in an organization that gave me free breakfast and yoga classes. It's great. But you're not speaking to what's really driving people, intrinsic motivations of basically being attached to a bigger purpose than themselves. And simply put, it just means that what I do, I know has a bigger impact than just on me. And that I can see how the work that I do impacts others. And so if you can actually just answer these three questions in an organization, it's basically, what do we do? And why does it matter? That should be universal across the whole organization. Everyone should get that. And then the third one, which becomes individualized and personalized, is, and how does my role fit in the bigger picture? Why do what I do matters in this mission? And you have to find a way of narrowing the gap between, I know that what I do has an impact on the people we serve. And whether that's by showing your people the impact that you have by bringing in customers and to tell the stories about how the work that you do is impacting them, whether that's by sharing with your organization stories of success of customers who come back to you, who tell you how you've changed their lives. It's just, you have to find a way. I mean, here's a crazy thing. I think it was like, they did a study to try and figure out, would people be willing to forfeit income for more purpose and meaning at work? And 9 out of 10 people were willing to give up to 27% of their entire income of their entire life in order to do more meaningful work. That's more than what you pay in your lifetime on your accommodation, pretty much, depending if you live in London. But it's crazy, right? It's insane. And so therefore, if you get that, then the only way forward is to really build purpose-driven workplaces where people can come together and know that what they do matters, and that you're doing this because you care, not because you want to make more profit. And here's the fun part: if you do that, profit will follow. Success will follow. There's some great, amazing case studies and examples of organizations who do some great stuff, which makes no sense business-wise on the short term, but it makes human sense. And I think that's what we're moving to with the rise of AI, machine learning, automation. It's never been a better time to actually ask yourself what it means to be human. And I think organizations who are going to be leading the next 100 years will be mission-driven, purpose-driven, and human-driven.
I believe it because you believe it as well. Your passion is very infectious. When you mentioned the stat that 9 out of 10 would rather purpose over money, even before that, I was thinking of the extreme. You mentioned all these things in offices. I was thinking, yeah, I wouldn't need, if I went to the extreme and you gave me purpose over those things, I would happily sit in an office with blank walls and maybe even no tables and sit on the floor. If I really was in touch, which I feel like I am, was in touch with what I do, just to go to the extreme.
Yeah, and I think both are true. I think you need to have a compelling purpose, and you need to have a conducive environment, right? Because even if, as purposeful as you are, if you showed up every day in a prison that was literally just blank walls and no lights, and you quickly go, yeah, okay, this is a good purpose, but I'm dying here. Like I'm literally just, I'm lacking vitamin D. I've got no more like social skill, So I think both are true. I think I think that anytime you swing too much on one side is where you have a problem. If you go too much on like just too much fancy stuff but no purpose, then you're just training people to have short-term incentives. But if you go too much to the purpose but no environment, then it's self-sacrificing and you're not serving anyone.
That may be one of my traits, Mark. You've caught it. I sometimes go too extreme.
Yes, you do. It's normal.
And when you go into these workplaces and these leaders either come to you or you approach them, do you find that these leaders are already in touch with their purpose?
It's a good question. So here's I think the challenge about my work, but what I find exciting and what I think is also a challenge, but it's not the first time that this has happened, whether that's in my life or what I've seen, is that there's two things that happen. You have people who you're trying to educate about a problem they're not willing to admit they have, right? Which is basically you're hemorrhaging talent because people vote with their feet and people are leaving. And the fact that that's happening, there's all these symptoms, right? There's like employee turnover, employee apathy, morale's down, all these things are happening and they don't really know why. And so you have to kind of go, well, actually, this is why. So a lot of people go, oh, okay. So they might not want to accept it. The other problem that you have is that you're trying to convince an organization that sometimes has to completely overhaul their culture and their mindset around how to treat people and employees. And so you have a massive culture shift. The other thing that I find very exciting, and tends to be actually people I work with, people who actually get it. Once they hear me talk about this, once they see my words, they go, of course, there's a penny drop moment. And they go, okay, how do we move forward? What do we need to do next? And so that's really exciting because it's people who know. I think it takes a lot of courage for leaders to be able to say, we may have a blind spot here, we may need some help. And the other thing is, I think it also takes a huge investment from organizations, not just financially, actually. I think it's more from a trust perspective to go, we will invest and grow our people because we believe that's right. Right? There's this kind of famous joke within the industry, which is a CEO talks to a CFO and the CEO says, oh, we need to train and invest and train our people. And the CFO says, but what if we train them and they leave? And the CEO replies, what if we don't and they stay? Right? And so it's kind of like, I think Richard Branson famously say this, you know, invest in your people so much that they can leave, but treat them so well they don't want to. And that I think is the biggest irony I get when I speak with companies, is that they go, oh yeah, you know, we have a wellness day once a year, or maybe once a quarter, you know, and that's kind of when we give back to our people. And I have to stop and kind of reflect it back to them and say, do you know how crazy that sounds? That's like saying that you're in a relationship and the only day you show your partner that you care about them is on Valentine's Day, and expect them to truly feel seen, heard, and loved the rest of the year. It's just not going to happen, right? It's like, same thing. I think it's so archaic still to this day that organizations are doing annual reviews, right? Or mid-year appraisals. It's mad. It means that for 6 months, you're not getting, you know, direct, concrete feedback being given back to you. Whereas if you speak to most, especially millennials and younger generations, they would much rather have like a weekly, you know, performance review, but more of a kind of a conversation. Okay, what are you focusing on? How's it going? What was challenging? What are you learning? What are you going to take next? Have a more continuous feedback to better understand how the work that you're doing is working and how you can grow. And that, I think, is just those kind of small elements. There's so much more to it, but it's if when companies get it, I think those companies will be still relevant in the next 10 to 20 years.
I instantly thought of relationships when you mentioned that earlier. You know, what if they stay? And I was like, oh God, you know, that's like platonic or romantic relationship. Why would you want a friend or a partner in that relationship that feels terrible, or feels like they don't know you, or doesn't feel valued? It's toxic. Yeah,
but it's because, I'll tell you why. I started saying this joke in my talks and presentations and stuff, but it comes from, this is a true story. It happens all the time. I'll get contacted by companies, you know, HR directors or CEOs or founders, and they'll get in touch with me. They'll say, hey, you know, we saw your TEDx talk, or we saw your talk on leadership at Event Lab, and we'd love to get you in. And I'll jump on a call with them just to better understand what they're about, you know, because I also select my clients. I want to make sure that it's the right values, that I can actually, you know, deliver value for them. And you know, and one of the first things they'll say is go, okay, great, sounds great. Can't wait for you to come here. And we'd love for you to come and help people find meaning and purpose in their work. But we don't want them to leave as a result of it. We don't want them to quit. And so you have to understand from a business perspective that we've been trained to is scarcity mindset, fear, and control. It is, if we control our people, then we have an upper hand, then we can make sure we get the results we want. But I have to then reflect it back to them and go, imagine if that was your partner. Imagine your partner said to you, honey, I'm super happy for you to go and do what you got to do, go and do some workshops, do some personal development, but I don't want you to do that at the expense of you leaving me. You'd go, that's pretty controlling, right? Okay, admittedly, there isn't a financial transaction in a relationship. You're not paying someone to stay there, right? So there's always this kind of reward. But I think you can translate the feeling by going, grow your people, because it's the right thing to do. And if they're going to leave, then they'll leave by saying, this was the best boss I had. This was the best company I worked for. And they'll become raving advocates and ambassadors for organization. Try and control them and force their hand. When they'll leave, they'll have nothing but negative things to say about you. And that shit just goes around and spreads like wildfire, you know? And so I think it's really trying to take a step back, take a meta view, take a helicopter view, and take leaders and go, look, the new generation of leaders are going to understand that profit is a byproduct of purpose, and that purpose changes everything. And if you get that, then I think it's a very, very exciting future ahead.
And what's been your biggest hurdle when you've gone into these companies? Was it a certain mindset or a certain routine they had going on that was really challenging?
It's still to this day. But here's the thing. I was telling you at the start, it's because I know this to be true. Like the same way that I knew that the video CD would work, the same thing that 4-5 years ago, I started a plant-based protein company in 7 days with 100 pounds. Nothing was around back then in terms of ready-made plant-based stuff. And now, like, I was just reading an article, plant-based food has grown by 300%, and it's like this huge $1 million industry now. And so it sounds like I'm saying, oh, I'm a visionary. I'm not. It's like there's only a few things I felt in my life, in my gut, that I'm like, I know this to be true. I can see this. It makes so much sense. It's just logical. And this is one of them. It's just one of them. It's just kind of, you know, if you could have the courage as a leader to go, we need to make sure that our people can bring their whole selves to work, because this is what this is all about. Ultimately, it's how can I bring my whole self to work, where I don't feel like I need to compartmentalize myself in different bits that I'm not. How can I come and say about the things that work, things that don't work? And here's the truth. You can't have that within an organization unless you have an independent, non-biased person, i.e. coach, who comes into the workplace to do that with your people. Because HR will say, oh, but that's my job. That's what I do. And, you know, I'm speaking with this awesome woman called Jo, and she's, you know, she used to come from HR, and she's the first one to say, there's no way people would come to you when you work at HR and be fully open about what's going on. It's just impossible, because A, you represent the company, that might impact your next decision to promote them or move them, and they're afraid that you might be reporting back to the CEO or the leadership team. And so there's this real kind of, it's a mindset shift, it's an education piece, and it's a vision, it's a selling of a vision and a dream that you have to go try this out for 3 months, see how it feels. You know, it's not a big investment, but trust that investing in your people in this way is gonna wield 10x results. You know, it's like I keep on saying this. If you want your people to over deliver, they need to feel over appreciated. And nothing says I appreciate more than going, I'm doing this for you, not because it's going to impact the business and we know it will in the long term, but I'm doing this for you because I think this is right and this is what's needed. And so that is, I think it's still a challenge to kind of get people to understand that. And when you talk to, the crazy thing is when you talk to millennials, when you talk to like young, they get it instantly. It's like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense. Of course. Yeah. And so when you talk to baby boomers, Gen Xers, and some, I guess, older millennials, it's still, you still have to really let go of what you think is right, what you think is, you know, how you grew up, how you were trained. You're going to forfeit that for the sake of the new generation that are coming in. And I think it's exciting, you know, 75% of the workforce will be millennials by 2025. So companies have got like effectively 6 years to get on board before they find out the hard way that there'll be like this whole purpose generation coming in at work, craving for something that they're not giving them, and watch the talent pool, you know, migrate to somewhere else.
And do you think, so I'm now thinking about people that leave the workplace to create startups and create their own vision.
Yeah.
Do you think they suffer at all at any point, maybe after they set up the startup, from lack of purpose, or there's lack of team building, or is there?
Yeah, it's a good question. So that's effectively my whole TEDx talk is a summary of what we just talked about, including that question. So my you know, 1 in 3, according to Visa Europe, 1 in 3 people dream of starting a business, but only 1 in 10 actually take the leap. And of the 1 of 3 people who launch a business, 80% fail within the first 18 months. And of those who continue and prevail, you've got, I think it's something like 1 in 3, according to Professor Freeman's research from the University of California, suffer from mental health issues. So it's hard. Like starting a business is super hard. It is not for the faint-hearted. It is extremely resource intensive. It is everything that you can never imagine it to be. And so my talk and my whole gist of what I'm trying to say to people is that when you start a business, what you're looking for is purpose, because you think that starting a business will give you a sense of purpose. But actually, you don't need to start a business to have purpose. You can absolutely have purpose within the work that you do. It's a complete way of reframing the way that you're experiencing work. And so to kind of summarize what you said, yeah, there's a massive problem. Like I spent quite a lot of time speaking at, you know, at events and conferences around entrepreneurship and startups and that kind of stuff. And there's a big problem around mental health in startups, 100%. It's a super lonely journey. You suddenly go from being this team member where you have everyone doing everything for you, which you don't realize, by the way, you don't realize that. It's a little bit like when you're a kid and you leave home for the first time. And you realize like, oh my God, laundry, tidying up, cleaning, cooking, you know, folding. Oh my God, all this stuff was like, you know, almost taken care for as a kid. But then suddenly you've got that. It's the same thing when you start a business. You kind of go, oh, so the IT guy or the IT girl, they were taking care of all my internet stuff. Oh, the accounting woman, that she was doing all my account. Oh my, and suddenly you do everything, like everything. And I think people don't understand, they've got this big grandiose dream of starting a business and sipping, pina coladas in Thailand while money's just streaming in and clients are just pouring at their door. And it's not. And I spend a lot of time working with entrepreneurs and startup founders and all this kind of stuff and coaches, and it's hard. And so, yeah, I think then it becomes difficult to remember what your purpose is and to connect that when your reptile brain kicks in and you got to pay the bills, pay the mortgage, pay the rent, and all you're thinking about is, I'm not getting clients. So I really don't think that starting a business is the end all answer to finding more purpose. It's not. For some people like me, it really was. At least at the time that I started, it's just in all my fiber. I've always been entrepreneur. I've always wanted to start this, and I'm all in. Like, it's been 3 years in. I've got this vision. I know that we're going to get there. I can see. I've got the vision of my team and the office space that we're in and the transformational workshop that we do and the coaching that all our coaches will be doing in company. I can see that, and that excites me. But it's hard. It's really hard. Yeah. I don't know if that answered your question. I went a bit on a rant there, but it's.
Go on a rant. No nutshells, no short stories. This is great, Mark. It's great. Gosh, I'm instantly thinking. So you're really sure, and I love the passion. I'm feeling inspired by it so much. And I think what's easy, what I notice with people I interact with today is they don't seem to understand the journey that someone may have been on, someone that, like yourself, that's inspiring others. So one of my questions for you is, at this turning point, it may have been when you had your coaching, it may have been before or after, did you notice that there was a belief that was holding you back, and maybe it came from these people you said were holding you back, and you only had friends that believed in you? Was there certain beliefs such as I am, and
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, there's so many there's so many, what sometimes the coaching jargon they call limiting beliefs or things holding you back. I think if it's interesting when you kind of explore even therapy, you start realizing that most of us are still wounded children. Like, most of us still have shit that we carry around since we're kids, whether that's money's bad, success is bad, don't stand out, don't make fun of yourself. So all those things, whatever it is that you're experiencing, let me tell you this. This is what I've learned. I've now sat down across 200 plus, because I used to be a commercial journalist in my first career. So 200 plus, top level business executive leaders, entrepreneurs, authors, politicians, really high performers. And the one thing I can tell you that they all have in common is that they're just like you and me. They're human. They have fears. They have doubts. They have insecurities. They have all those things. They really do. Like, one of the reasons why I wanted to launch the podcast was to show people, because I used to hang out with the people I coached aspired to become. And I knew the reality of them. I knew that it wasn't all rosy and perfect and what social media portrays. I knew that there were moments that they couldn't come out of their beds because they're just feeling so down. I knew that they lost that client. I knew all those things. And so I wanted to be able to highlight that by saying everyone carries that around. The difference, however, is that despite having that, they don't let that get in the way of keep taking a foot forward, taking a step forward, and then the next one. I was speaking to Riley McGee, my King of the Ops team member. He's based in New York, around New York yesterday. And he used this great metaphor around, sometimes it's easy to get stuck and look at the whole football pitch and look at all the players and all this stuff. Go back to the goalie, and the goalie's goal is to go, no pun intended, but the goalie's purpose is get the first ball to the first defender. The defender will pass to someone else, and then yes, we're trying to get the ball into the net of the opposition, but we've got to do it one by one. And I think that's what I would say. I would say, there's so many things that you could stress out about. There's so many things that you think you need to do. Just focus on that one thing. What is that one thing? If you go back to my TEDx talk, I talk about we need to talk about mini purpose, micro purpose, micro quest. We need to really start breaking things down to start going that. You may not know what you want to do right now. You may not be driven or called or summoned by some greater, grandiose purpose. That's fine. Most people aren't. I wasn't. I didn't know what it was. And I'm still finding it. I'm still exploring it. I'm still defining it. And so what I would say is the secret ingredient to all of that, the antidote of doubt, is following curiosities. It's really as simple as that. It's breadcrumbs that will lead you to something, whatever that something may be, if you're open to it. You know, I think a lot of people are like, oh no, that's not it, that's not it. It's like, have you tried? Have you experienced that? So, you know, I don't know what it is. It could be, I want to learn how to make a great coffee. I want to become a barista, just spend a couple of hours learning how to make a great coffee. Great, learn that. I want to do a bit of graphic designing. I want to do some knitting. I want to do goal. I don't know what it could be. Writing, you know, spoken words, improv, stand up. I don't know what that thing that is calling you, the thing that you keep on thinking about that doesn't go away, that you think is crazy and silly because it's not related to any career or any topic like that, and go do that. Because what happens is that it's who you become as you do these things. It's not so much what you do, it's who you become, what you start noticing, what you start realizing about yourself. And it's like a muscle. It really is. The more you do these little things, the stronger your muscle gets. And the more you kind of go, oh, I never thought I could do this because I thought it was crazy, but now I'm doing it. What else can I do? And this kind of escalates and increases. And, you know, I'm at a stage where I've still got things that I'm trying to go, okay, that's the next step. And what's the next step? And it never ends. It really never ends. And I think if you go at it by going, I am exactly where I need to be. And in fact, I think one of the biggest challenges we have in today's society and how we are is this. It's a gift and a curse, because it's a gift because we're able to like, we have the same kind of, you know, data power that the first computer that put the first man on the moon has in this phone. I mean, it's mad to think that, you know, the technology that lives in it, but at the same time, we are the comparison generation. So we kind of have access, you know, there's the story I love, I forgot who said this, but back in the day, the only things you used to see about your neighbor was if they brought a new car or maybe a box outside going in the house, and you could have speculations of like, oh, what's in that box? Or, you know, look, they just bought a new car. Look at the hedges, maybe the grass. That's it. Today, it's like you wake up and suddenly you're on world center stage and the spotlight's on you and everybody can see and watch what you do, and you start watching everybody else. And because this is a showreel reality show of what our lives are, we start thinking, oh, but look how far they are, look how amazing they are, look how I'll never be that. And so if you really want to take finding your purpose seriously and doing more meaningful work, you have to go on a low media diet. Like, you have to figure out to stop consuming content. Daniel Parisi, the founder of Dent Global, who I get to do some work with as well, you know, told me this. He said, you know, often when you're feeling down or low or unsure about things, you consume. And you think that you just need to consume one more show, one more course, one more book, one more podcast, one more thing, and you'll find that thing. But you never do. And actually, the opposite is true. You need to create. And you can't consume and create at the same time. So you need to stop consuming and start creating. And I don't know what your creation may be. It doesn't matter. Cooking is one, you know, drawing is one, singing, I don't care what it is, writing, recording, whatever it is. You've got to figure out what your little thing is that you want to create and stop judging it. I think that's what I would say.
Bear with me 1 second. I need to put a charger in. Da, 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 da. Everything you're saying, I'm making mental notes. I'm like, ooh, breadcrumbs. Ooh, low media diet. Note. So you talk about building this muscle, you know, this muscle of finding your purpose or releasing the pressure of what even a purpose is, a higher power. And where my brain is going is, for me, I had to do a lot of literal training. And what I mean is, I wrote down my limiting beliefs. I had to journal to find out what they were beforehand. I put them on my wall. I shared them with people to release myself of that shame. I had depression, and I set kind goals such as, okay, I'll try and go to 3 things I want to do today, as in do 3 hobbies or whatever it was. Accountability buddies. I set alarms that tell me affirmations about how great I am. I could go on, but I'd love to know, did you have more of a practical application like that, building a muscle?
Yeah, it's a good thing. You know, and it's funny when you say limiting belief, what came up for me is, for a long time I made up that money was evil, that making money was bad, and that if you wanted to do good in the world, you couldn't be driven by also making money. And something shifted in me, you know, a few years back when I started realizing that actually the opposite is true. Not making money is selfish, because if I truly want to have a bigger impact, if I truly want to be able to build a team, inspire people, give more money to foundations and causes I believe in, then I needed to have more income and create a kind of a wealth legacy. And so that shifted for me a lot when I started realizing that actually it's not about me, me asking companies, me asking individuals for money, for charging. It wasn't about me. And that was a big thing actually. And I like the idea of writing what your limiting beliefs are. And if you don't know, every time you have a resistance, notice what that resistance is about. And that usually is a bit of information. But in terms of, I'm really bad, and I would love to sit here and say, yeah, I've got these amazing daily routines and morning rituals, and I don't. I've been on and off. I know a few things that work really well for me when I do them. I don't do them regularly, but they do work for me. So just spending 5-10 minutes connecting, meditating. I used to use Headspace for a while. I just found the talking a little bit too much after a while, so then I switched to Calm. So I do Calm now. I love the background noises, and so I'll set 5-10 minutes and I'll just kind of meditate, sit down, and then usually I'll follow that with a bit of journaling. So I'll just write things that come up, the stresses I have, and the anxious stuff I have, things I'm ashamed of, whatever that stuff is. And those and then obviously I usually try and pair that up with some form of physical activity, because I learned this through Johnny Bang Riley, one of my guests, who basically metaphor was sweating is your body's sewage system. And I thought that was such a great way of putting it. So it's kind of like, the more I sweat, the more I'm kind of getting rid of the toxins and this kind of stuff. So moving my body, sweating, that usually helps. And I also did for a little while, I don't do it anymore, but I did a thing with like the gratitude journal, but it's like 3 things that I'm really grateful for that day. And that helps. There's like gratitude jars that you can have, which is like you put things that you love about yourself, that you're grateful, put them in a jar. When you're feeling down, you just take one out and you kind of read it to remind yourself. That's kind of, but what's interesting, and I know we're running out of time, but there's something about, so when I was a kid, so I grew up in France, and I'm dyslexic, and I couldn't spell for shit. I still can't spell for shit in French. And so I always had this kind of chip on my shoulder of having to prove something, because I was being put down by my teachers, made fun of, and all this stuff. And so I've always had in me this really strong desire to prove other people wrong, this resiliency that's driven me. And so, good or bad, I'm not saying it's a gift, I'm not saying it's a curse. I'm grateful for it personally, I really am, because it's enabled me to do so many things in my life, to overcome so many challenges, to throw myself in the deep end on so many different projects. And I think still today, I think what drives me is that little voice inside of me that says, it's crazy, but it's true. And it can be done. It's just that sheer belief that even though days I'm like, screw this, why am I doing this? It's ridiculous. I should just get a job. And why am I putting all this pressure on myself? But then I kind of catch myself and go, because if I don't do this, then who will? And if not now, then when? And it's making the people I'm trying to serve more important than me looking good. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Oh, I know we're out of time. I have so many more questions. So I'll just get a couple more. So before all this, do you feel like you ever at one point lived your life according to a set of rules, expectations?
Yeah, definitely. I think well, it's funny that the Unconventionalists, which is the most unpronounceable and spelling word in the universe, but it really, I keep on coming back to it. It really just, I think it encapsulates in some way what my life has been about, which has always been about different, just being okay with being a bit different and doing things differently. Yeah, I think when I was a kid, again, I think I was very fortunate to have a self-belief that all the adults were just full of shit and wrong. And I was a kid, and I loved acting, and I loved sports, and I loved geography and stories and writing, and I loved all that. I hated everything else, and everybody was like, "Oh, you need to be really good at maths, and you really need to be good at, spell." And I'm like, I don't care. One day I won't care about this one day, and I know I won't. And so that's one. But then what comes up for me, the second thought is, the afterthought is, yeah, I think when I believed that you're supposed to get a good job, and I went and had this good career, and I was fitting, the profile, I realized that, I wasn't aware of what success means to me. And I think, if I could ask a question, or if I could give something everyone, it would be, take a moment and really ask yourself, what does success mean to me? Not what my partner thinks, not what my parents think, not what my parental figure thinks, not what my society around me, my culture, my workplace, my friends, but what do I? And it never fails to amaze me that the more people ask themselves that question, the more they start realizing that they're living the wrong. There's this thing I think in my book I wrote, which is that there's nothing worse than coming at the top of the ladder and realizing you're on the wrong wall. And it's kind of like, for a lot of people, it might also take an assessment around what actually brings them value, what actually brings them meaning, and often, maybe not, but most often people will start realizing that it's not more money, and it's not more material possessions, it's not bigger houses, it's not the biggest car, it's not the greatest holidays, it'll be experiences, it will be feeling. So I'm not making as much money as I used to once upon a time, and maybe I will one day, and I'm sure I will, but the quality of my life is completely different. The luxury of being able to bring my daughter to nursery and not have to stress about being at a particularly good time at office. The fact that on Tuesday, and I wrote about it on LinkedIn today and in my newsletter, I was heading for burnout. I was totally exhausted. I'd been doing back-to-back workshops, talks, being a dad, all that stuff. And I woke up on Tuesday feeling absolutely awful, came to my office, and then at 1 o'clock realized, I'm heading for a burnout. Like, I'm absolutely exhausted. And so I took the time off, went back home and just slept and was in bed and just chilled out in my bed until 5 or 6 when I got my daughter and gave her a bath and stuff. And I thought, you couldn't pay me enough money for me to not have that luxury of be able to say, actually, I need to listen to what feels right. And so that's, it's what do you value? There's a great episode I did with Paul Jarvis for people listening to this. They want to go and check it out. I think it's episode 108, maybe, or 9. They can check it out on the Unconventionalist podcast. And it was amazing. I call him the minimalist with a Porsche. He's like, he lives in this cabin in Canada somewhere with his wife. And you realize very early on that money is something that's great, but it should be able to give you experiences and not have to worry about it. Apart from that, we get bombarded by 3,500 marketing messages each day telling us how we should feel, who we should be, how we should think, what should we do. And so it's really easy to fall into the pattern of like, of course I want this, of course I want a six-pack, I mean, of course I want to look like that, of course my bicep should be like this, of course my partner should look like that, of course the car I drive should, of course my kids should look like that, because we're being fed back what our insecurity about really sitting still with who we are, how we feel, and what we want is being reflected back at us. And so if we're not sure about what we want, we'll latch onto anything, we'll grab onto anything. So I'll leave you with this. I'll say, pause today, take 5 minutes, take a piece of paper out and say, in an ideal day, what would you do? In your ideal setting, where would you be? Who would you be with? And I think most people would be surprised to go, oh, actually, I think I'm very happy with a more simple life. Minimalism is a great documentary to watch on Netflix. They also came on the show. Marie Kondo's book, the Magical Art of Tidying. I think it's a great book. I did a video that's really popular on YouTube called How to Become a Minimalist. All these things speak to us because we realize that more is bullshit. It's not what we need. Actually, less is more,
And you mentioned your book. What's that called?
Oh yeah, it's not you, it's me. I don't know when this is going to be published, but if you're listening to this, you can go to markleruste.com, scroll right at the bottom of the page, and you can get it for free, or you can buy it on Amazon. But otherwise, you can get it for free at the bottom of the page. I might be changing it soon, so if you're listening to this, hurry and get it.
Go and get it. Wow, what a good deal. What are your thoughts, or what do you know so far about Smiles for the World? It's not a trick question. It's just, what are your thoughts on it, even on the title?
Well, what comes up for me when I say Smiles for the world or of the world?
For the world.
Yeah, Smiles for the world. It's kind of like, well, if you smile at the world smiles back at you.
Nice. I love it. Well, I'll let you go. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on this interview. And if you loved watching, please share it with your friends to inspire them, share it via messaging on your wall, wherever you feel, whilst also on your low media diet. Got that one, Mark. Mark LeRuste, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me. Cheers, Isla.
Have a good day, Mark. See you.